Nature's beauty is endless and complex. The artists have painted it on canvas and poets have described it in so many words. The scientists throughout the world never cease to observe, to wonder, and explore the mysteries hidden in nature. Why is the sky blue and why is the sea deep blue? Why are the leaves green and why are flowers of different colors? Why does the ice look blue and why does crystal glitter in all directions? These and many more questions were continually asked for nearly 70 years by one of the most illustrious sons of India, Chandrasekhar Venkat Raman, a scientist par excellence. According to the modern view of science, nature can only be described. It cannot be explained. Like many extraordinary natural phenomena, C.V. Raman can only be described. He defies explanation. Venkat Raman was born on the 7th November 1888 in the small village near Trichy in Tamil Nadu. His mother was Parvati. His father, Chandrasekhar Iyer, was a teacher in a local school. Raman matriculated at the age of 11 and at 13, after doing his intermediate, joined the Presidency College, Madras. There is a story that one of the professors of college could not believe that this little boy was a student and asked if he had come there by mistake. There was a general laughter, but soon the professors found him so remarkably intelligent that they exempted him from attending all the science classes as they felt he had nothing to learn from them. Some of the certificates that his teachers gave Raman are interesting. The best student in 30 years, has an unusual appreciation of English literature, possesses great alertness of mind and a strong intellectual grasp. His first research paper on diffraction bands was published in the Philosophical Magazine of London when Raman was 17 years old. It is hard to believe that no one had guided his research, but it is true. Against all conventions of the time, he arranged his own marriage with Lokasundari, who was only 13 years old. And in 1907, when Raman was 18 and a half years old, the young couple went to Calcutta. How he began his scientific life in Calcutta is best described by Professor Ramaseshan, a former student of Raman, Padma Bhushan, and now Professor Emeritus at Raman Research Institute in Bangalore.
Actually, his best work was done at Calcutta. I think we must say that. The point was he passed his BSc Honours examination, and then during his college career, he himself started research work. And then some of his teachers thought that he should go to England. His health was not very good, and so the district medical officer said that he should not go to England. And Raman has always said that was one of the best things that happened to me, because that made me an independent scientist. But there was no other thing to do, so he appeared for what is called the Financial Civil Service examination, and he became the Assistant Accountant General. And he was posted to Nagpur, Rangoon, and Calcutta. At all these places in the evening he was doing research, while during the day he was doing whatever an assistant accountant general or a deputy accountant general does. In Calcutta, while he was going in Barbazar Street, suddenly he saw a small plaque which stated Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science. I would say this again comes under the fact that Raman is a great observer, and he observed this. So in the evening he went in and knocked at the door, and the door was opened by a young man called Ashutosh Dey, and he asked what it was. And Ashutosh Dey, who is called Ashu Babu affectionately by everyone, said that this institution had been started by Mahendralal Sarkar, and it was meant for the propagation of science. So Ashutosh Dey took Raman to Amritlal Sarkar. Mahendralal Sarkar had died, Amritlal Sarkar the son. And Amritlal Sarkar embraced Raman and said, "You come and work here." So every morning from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the association, 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock assistant accountant general, and 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock in the evening in the association. That was his routine.
Raman had only a few workers with him. Even so, publications poured out. He started the Indian Journal of Physics. All his research was connected with his direct sensory experiences.
And the two senses that Raman had particularly developed were the sense of hearing and the sense of sight. And therefore, it was acoustics and optics.
Raman had heard his father play violin, had done experiments on sonometer in college. So followed his papers on bowed string, struck strings, vibrations, and resonance. Yehudi Menuhin wrote in his visit to the institute, "To an authority on sound from an ignorant violinist." His sharp ear sensed the unmusical and noise-producing Western drum, but detected musical overtones in the sound of the mridangam and the tabla. He discovered that the heterogeneous loading of their membranes can produce harmonics, so that in the hands of the masters, the Indian drum is similar to a stringed instrument.
Then Ashutosh Mukherjee, the Vice Chancellor of the Calcutta University, one of the very great persons, as I mentioned, he got people, collected some of the greatest young people around himself, and in Calcutta. And he asked Raman whether he would come and join in the physics department of the Calcutta University. Raman resigned his position, a very lucrative position in the finance department, and took up the Palit professorship. So he was the secretary to the Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science, and he was the Palit professor in the College of Science of the University of Calcutta, and between these two he did an enormous amount of research.
Raman was reluctant to go abroad, but under pressure from Sir Asutosh, he went to Europe and met Einstein, Rutherford, Millikan, and Niels Bohr, and made some lifelong friends. He marveled at the whispering galleries of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, and after doing a few experiments, published 2 papers on the Victoria Memorial at Calcutta and Gol Gumbaj at Bijapur. In this voyage, Raman came face to face with the grandeur of the Mediterranean Sea.
He writes that it was the incredible beauty of the blue of the Mediterranean that made him look into the problem of the scattering of light by molecules of water. But it is not as if he had not seen the blue of the seas. In fact, he was a student of the Presidency College of Madras and has written a beautiful piece to indicate how students, when they were not interested in the lectures, could just turn round and see the beauty of the blue of the oceans. But it was really the Mediterranean Sea that made him realize that the phenomenon was much deeper than what they had thought it was. And therefore, one can definitely say it was the Mediterranean that forced him into this field of scattering of light by water and the liquids.
The announcement of the discovery of new radiation, or Raman effect, was made to the Associated Press on the 29th February 1928. This beautiful discovery, resulting from Raman's long and patient study of the phenomena of light scattering, was to become one of the most convincing proofs of the quantum theory of light. Raman was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1930 for his work on the diffusion of light and for the discovery of the effect named after him. It is said that while receiving the coveted award, he wept because he had to sit under the British flag. His Nobel lecture is a masterpiece of composition relating the exciting story of the persistent efforts from 1921 to 1930, giving detailed accounts of the contribution made by each of his collaborators. In 1933, Raman accepted the directorship of the Indian Institute of Science at Bangalore and worked there till 1948, when he retired. During these 15 years, he worked in the areas of scattering, vibration of crystal lattice, physics of diamonds, and host of other problems. Raman's interest in diamonds is well known. It is perhaps not well known that X-ray topography was discovered in this laboratory while studying imperfections in diamond. During this period, he was awarded with the highest honor in India, Bharat Ratna. In 1948, he was made a national professor. He had hoped to start an institute with his life's saving, but he lost most of it in South Sea bubble investment. He was 60 then, and to anyone else, it would have been an impossible situation. But Raman was undeterred. He went round the country and collected money. Our greatest men were beggars, he said, the Buddha, Shankara, or even Gandhi. With some investment, some collection, and little saving, he launched his project on creating an institute, resigning from all the committees and avoiding grant from the government. For some years, there was no equipment or even electrical power in his institute. He arranged his famous mineral, crystal, and gem collection and commenced his researches on color. It is remarkable how much information he could extract by just sending a beam of light into a gem and observing the scattering.
I think he was a child of nature, that if we have to understand the workings of the laws of physics, you have to study nature. And he always felt that nature was trying to tell us something, and all the time what the scientist has to do is to tune himself to nature and try to understand what nature tells us. The color of shells, the color of birds, the color of flowers, the color of the rainbow, the color of the sea, the color of the glaciers. And each one of these he studied and produced very beautiful papers and found some of the laws of nature, including the greatest of his discoveries, the Raman effect. In fact, he was almost obsessed by the fact there were two obsessions he had. One was obsession with nature, obsession with color, and the other was obsession with the education of children. He felt, probably rightly, that instead of starting big laboratories, much money should have been spent in schools and colleges and universities so children could have been educated. For he felt that we were not spending sufficient time, energy on the raw materials that were to make up the greatness of our country.
This hurt him most. My life, he once cried, has been an utter failure. I thought I would try to build true science in the country, but all we have is a legion of camp followers of the West. It was in this phase that Raman resigned from the Royal Society of London. Raman did come out of his despondency.
And therefore he said, if the children can be enthused, the sleeping giant will wake up and we can conquer the world. And therefore, the last stages of his life, he used to take children round this institute. He used to show them his marvelous crystal collections. He used to give them lectures. And I have met a large number of children, I put it within inverted commas, who are fairly old gentlemen now, who started science because they had come to this institute in 1950s or 1960s and had been taken round by Raman, because for they felt that here was something and science was worth pursuing.
He began lecturing to younger audience. The university halls began overflowing. He made fervent pleas to the government to improve school and university education and university research. He trained scores of students, published more than 400 scientific papers and monographs, founded the Indian Academy of Sciences in 1934, started and ran many scientific journals and carried on his research right up to his death in 1970. Anyone who met him could not but be struck by his wit, his zest for life, and his intense love of and preoccupation with nature and its beauty.
What was the relationship between Bhabha and Raman?
Both of them admired each other very much. Many people do not know that Bhabha was an engineer first and then became a nuclear physicist. And he used to draw extremely well. Indeed, so well that his collection of drawings have been published and many people admired it. Bhabha, in his turn, admired Raman and his tremendous admiration for nature and so on. Once Bhabha drew a picture of Raman and presented it to him, saying, Professor Raman, here is a picture of a scientist as viewed by a scientist. Then Raman said, no, Bhabha, you're wrong. It is a picture of an artist as viewed by an artist. I think that summarizes both Baba and Raman.
To Raman, scientific activity was the fulfillment of an inner need. His approach to science was one of passion, curiosity, and simplicity. It was an attempt to understand nature. To him, science was based on independent thought combined with hard work. Science was a personal endeavor, an aesthetic pursuit, and above all, a joyous experience. Thomas Paine once said, "But such is the irresistible nature of truth that all it asks and all it wants is the liberty of appearing."
The